Good morning, everybody. It's a nice, breezy Monday morning. I just got back from taking the dog for a walk, and he's out chasing leaves around the backyard now. I wanted to talk today a little bit about how we get other people's stories. For me, that was the way to identify with other people in recovery and to realize that I very much needed to be in recovery. One of my pet peeves about people's stories is that they end up being mostly drunkalogs. And that's understandable in new sobriety, new recovery, because we don't have any history of recovery, really. So all we have to talk about is our past, our drinking, our using. I'm a book-oriented kind of person. I've been a published writer for over 40 years now, and when I was in early recovery, one of the things I was trying to find were books on recovery that were narratives, that were stories, people's stories. And unfortunately, at that time, mostly what I found were books that talked about either the person's entire life, what they were like as a baby, and, how tough kindergarten was, and so on and so forth, which I really didn't care about. I wanted to know about their recovery from alcoholism or drug addiction. So I found a few other books that were primarily drunkalogs. It'd be like a 300-page book, and you get to page 340 or 350 or 360 before the person actually stopped drinking and using and got into recovery. And then it was like, well, what happened? How did you learn to stay sober? And I wasn't getting that information from those books at the time. Many of them like New York Times bestsellers, the kind of thing you could get at the library or almost anywhere. So that was disheartening to me. And when I got sober and then stayed sober for over 10 years or so, I ended up writing a book because I just felt that kind of book ought to be out there, where the primary thing covered in the book is how somebody got and stayed sober. And the book I'm talking about is Halfway House, A Story. It's about my first 9 months or so in recovery. Now, it does have a few pages at the beginning, just so people can identify about what happened. They ask us when we're sharing our stories to talk about what we were like, what happened, and what we're like now. So I'm just going to read a few pages out of this opening, and this is what happened. It's from the first chapter. It's called Bad News. It is a rainy Saturday evening in mid-October in Indianapolis, and I'm riding downtown on a bus from a meeting at the club, a hangout for people in recovery. I can see my face in the bus window, and I'm thinking I look haggard. My skin is sallow, and I've got bags under my eyes. I can't weigh more than 160 pounds, and I don't look good this skinny. Maybe it's just the lighting, I tell myself. My mind wanders. Then I'm watching out the window at headlights reflecting on the wet pavement and the cars swishing by, windshield wipers slapping back and forth. And up ahead, just below 16th Street, I see the marquee for a gay bar I sometimes go to, and that gets me thinking. Yeah, I felt good saying I was an alcoholic at the meeting earlier, but hey, it's not like I'm giving up that much. I've only really been sober since whatever time I passed out last night. I mean, I didn't say that at the meeting. Usually I just mumble my name and say, I pass. I yank the cord and hear the bell ring before the brakes start groaning to let me off at the corner. I want to get off on the north side because I'm just that iffy about my decision not to go to the gay bar, even though it's a Saturday night, and I know what a hassle it can be fending off advances from some hammered queen, even with the bartender leaning across the bar saying, "Leave the man alone, honey, he's not interested in you." Besides, lately I've been blacking out after the first drink or two, still standing at the kitchen counter with my coat on. Then I'm coming to at 4 in the morning. That's been going on a lot since early May when I got out of treatment. Stayed sober for a couple of weeks and then fell off the wagon, hoping to get lucky with some gal. Hell, it happened at a bar right downtown. I stopped in to grab lunch and started chatting it up with some 40-ish brunette who seemed, well, like me, a drinker. Then I come out of a blackout and I'm sitting at a table with a much younger African American woman, and apparently we are in the middle of an engaging conversation, and then cut to, I come out of another blackout and the younger woman is gone too, and the bartender is eyeballing me, and I barely have the motor skills to get out of there and walk home. Anyway, I get off the bus in the drizzle and cross Pennsylvania Street, staying on the north side of 16th, and start walking east past the art college where I used to do a bit of partying. The art college was one of the attractions of this neighborhood for me when I took my apartment, or memories of the good old days, I should say, because at 49 now, I don't have much to bring to the table for some young art student honey. I'm too old. I don't look my age yet, but I haven't taught anywhere in years and years, and these kids don't want to hear my 20-year-old lies about New York and poetry readings and artists and writers they've never even heard of. The world has changed, and my vision of things doesn't grab their attention, even though in the last 5 years I've probably done my best writing, and my name is out there in a small way. Right this very evening, a novel of mine is on the shelves of bookstores in this city and elsewhere, and these kids really might dig that book. It might speak to them, if they knew where to find it, if they actually read it, but they don't and they won't. Somehow, I was never able to make a life out of my writing in any practical sense, never able to get the kind of exposure that would carry me out onto the public stage in a substantial way. Maybe I was just too busy partying and chasing women, I don't know, but I'm starting to feel like I'm becoming a dinosaur, and I don't like that. I don't want to be one of those creepy old guys who hang around campuses or poetry readings and such, ogling the young girls. Continuing east, I pass a 4-story apartment building, boarded up and condemned now, where early mornings I see this old guy slip out with his dog for a walk. I think about how my landlord is trying to evict me, the green notice plastered on my mailbox every other month or so until I get the past due rent paid. Or the telephone gets turned off. Christ, I notice the homeless men downtown now too, thinking, it may not be that long for me, what with the boss looking to fire me for absenteeism every couple months. Last time I thought they had me. I was given an exit interview and I had to sign off on a bunch of paperwork that came down from corporate and everything. But then I noticed they'd screwed it up. They'd miscounted their days. I tried to tell my boss right then, but he says, maybe that's how you want to remember it. He had an assistant manager drive me home as a courtesy. I immediately dug out the paperwork from my last write-up, and yep, there it was. They had miscounted the days. I called an attorney friend who said, what do you want? You got him by the balls. That was, like I say, last spring when my girlfriend was really putting the heat on me about my drinking. Former girlfriend now, I guess. Anyway, I told my boss when I called and asked him to actually read the paperwork from the last write-up, that all I wanted was treatment for as long as the insurance would carry me, and then day shifts. My boss had no choice. I don't know how serious I was about treatment. I probably thought it would get me back in Bobby's good graces. I don't know, but here we are again, and the boss is trying to fire me, and Bobby will hardly take my calls. It's funny about treatment or rehab, whatever. I've done it twice as an inpatient and twice as outpatient, and I thought I was serious at the time. Well, maybe. I was in I was inpatient at the VA in the late 80s, but I was looking at a court date, and I also had a court date for one of the outpatient treatment programs I went to. The other 2 times, I was in trouble with whoever my spouse or significant other was at the time. I was always in a lot of uncertainty and ambivalence about the idea of being sober, about the thought of not ever taking another drink. I would make a decision, but then somehow I couldn't really stick to this decision, and I would just sort of let things unfold however they unfolded. Even now, some mornings I come to and there's 3 or 4 beers left and maybe part of a 5th, and I'll make a decision. No mas. So I'll pour everything down the sink. But by 4 o'clock or whenever my last break is, I'll go out for a smoke and dart across the street to the drugstore and buy one of those 5ths of vodka in a plastic bottle that I can sneak into my locker, and I'll decide that I can wait till I get home to drink it. But then the bus will be going by as I come out the front door, meaning I'll have to wait another hour for the next one. So I decide to walk out back by the dumpsters, and I end up drinking half the 5th and smoking 6 or 7 cigarettes to kill an hour. It's shit like this. I can't seem to make a decision that I won't go back on. I cross Central and decide I'd better get something to eat, so I walk diagonally through an empty lot and head into the Kroger supermarket to get a few things. Coming out, it's raining now, but not hard. I get to the corner across the street from the liquor store, and I feel another decision get unmade. My legs carry me across, dodging a couple of cars and into the liquor store. It's one of those dingy little liquor stores where no alcohol or anything is kept out on the display floor. It's not like liquor stores downtown or out in the suburbs. The floor is bare linoleum except for dirt and grime. All the liquor and beer and wine are kept behind the counter, behind thick plexiglass and wire mesh. The sales clerks, 2 young black women, are behind the plexiglass and wire mesh too. You have to communicate with them through a round metal grill in the plexiglass, and they deliver your booze and cigarettes and whatever else to you through a large sliding metal drawer just below the counter. I take my place at the end of the line of 7 or 8 customers, a couple of whom are glancing back with disgusted looks on their faces. I'm wondering what the hell when I catch a whiff. It smells like somebody just defecated in his pants. After a couple of seconds, the smell gets worse, almost like it wraps itself around me in a big hug. Somebody else looks back down the line. She's looking at the creature directly ahead of me, who is a wreck of a human being. He's small and bent, and it's impossible to tell from looking at him how old he is. He's too weather-beaten and just plain worn out from living on the street. He's bundled in 2 dirty overcoats with a gray stocking cap pulled down over long, matted, unruly gray hair. He glances back at me through red-rimmed, bloodshot eyes and then looks away, muttering something. Pardon, I say? The bum looks back at me again, frightened suddenly. He begins mumbling to himself. He puts his hand in his pocket and pulls out a large handful of change, which he now begins to count. The odor coming off this guy is choking me, robbing me of oxygen, and now it smells like he's pissed himself too. It's all I can do to keep my place in line. Of course, I'm not really considering leaving without what I came for. When the man finishes counting his change, he returns it to his pants pocket. He glances back at me a little fearfully again. You okay, buddy? I say. That seems to spook him all over again. He looks frantically around him, up at the counter and at some of the others in line, and then back at me. I don't say anything else to him. I'm afraid I might really rattle him. I just look at the back of his head, trying not to breathe. He seems to alternate between not knowing where he is and panic about his money, mumbling and pulling his change out to recount it. There's this one moment when he yanks the change out of his pocket where it looks as though he might drop it on the grimy bare floor. I think, please no. I'm afraid he might completely lose it if that happens. Finally, the bum gets his wine in a paper bag from the metal drawer and then shuffles toward the door. I watch him for a second. It occurs to me that I am just like him. He's just me without the job and the apartment. Otherwise, we're the same. We are alcohol drinking machines. What is happening to me is what has happened to him, and there is nothing I can do to stop it. All I can do is watch it happen. I don't feel frightened or depressed by this realization. It's just a fact, an observation that tonight, for whatever reason, isn't immediately smothered by my sense of denial. The bum pushes out through the door, and I look back at just in time to see the young black girl behind the plexiglass mouth the word, "Next." Yeah, I think. I'm not fooling her either. I buy cigarettes, beer, and bourbon. I come out of the liquor store and look around the parking lot for the little bum, but he is nowhere to be seen. Bobby and the counselors at rehab, my doctor, all keep saying things like, "You know, man, you keep going on this way and you won't make it to 50. I would be okay with that, actually. I've been thinking a lot about it lately. I know I won't be able to stop, and I know that's completely insane, but I really can't see my life without booze. Don't want a life without drinking, really. Besides, I probably won't die from a heart attack or cirrhosis of the liver like everybody keeps warning me anyway. I'll just go on like this guy, sleeping in dumpsters or in a refrigerator carton under a bridge somewhere. Jesus, it could take years. My problems are the blackouts, the terrible tremors in the morning, the mood swings, and the deepening depression and loneliness that grab hold of me, and on and on. I mean, it's getting so bad that I couldn't keep an appointment to look at a new apartment the other day. The building is located on Pennsylvania, not far from the gay bar. An acquaintance that drinks there told me about it, and I had a 1 p.m. appointment Sunday to look at it. I described myself to the building owner, who was driving up from way down on the south side of Indy. And I didn't drink all morning, and I got there early, and I was sweating like a pig. I figured I probably stank, the alcohol coming out of my pores. I started feeling like I was going to faint too, so I sat on the stoop smoking cigarettes, my hands shaking so bad I could hardly light up. I realized I wouldn't be able to sign any paperwork even if it got that far. Finally, I bolted for the gay bar and downed 2 shots and a beer, watching the clock until I figured the guy's given up on me and left. Walking home from the liquor store now, I glance around a couple of empty lots in between some apartment buildings, hoping to catch a glimpse of the bum. I don't know why. There's nothing I can really do for him. I wonder how he'll make it through the coming winter. I let myself into my building and get my mail from the box. I lug my groceries and booze down the hall to my door, unlock and push in. I don't waste time. I drop the mail on the floor, dump the groceries on a chair, and head for the kitchen counter. I twist the cap off the bottle of bourbon. I take a big slug, feeling the fire as I swallow. I let it burn its way down my throat. Then I pop the cap on a beer. I take a big drink, chugging it almost half the can down. Now I feel good. I'm okay. Darkness comes like a giant mouth and swallows me. When I tell my story at meetings, looking around the room at my fellow recovering drunks sipping coffee, I have to admit that I juice some of this up a bit, especially the next part where I come out of a blackout, sick and hungover, and find my old single-shot 12-gauge and a pint of bourbon in bed with me. I mean, it's all true, but I know how to tell it for dramatic effect, and sometimes maybe I cross the line a bit with the drama. I don't know. Maybe it's even melodramatic. I don't mean for it to be, because it wasn't like that. I mean, it was, but it wasn't, not really. But I don't want to amp up the drama here. I come to that day, come out of my blackout, and I'm disoriented and full of fear and remorse, the usual. It's funny how you can learn to live with being drunk and hungover and sick all the time, how that becomes the norm. But what freaks me out is learning from the morning news that it isn't Sunday morning as I think it should be, but Thursday morning. The red numerals on my alarm clock tell me it's about 7:30 o'clock. There are a few minutes of confusion, then panic before I figure out that I've been in a blackout for 5 days. Now that's pretty scary, even for me. Also, I'm experiencing violent tremors, my hands shaking so badly that I can't get a cigarette out of the pack on my nightstand. I uncap the pint of bourbon about a third full and take a hit, and then another and another. Things begin to come back into focus. It's like someone has redrawn the outline around me, the me inside. I'm defined. I'm me again. My apartment is trashed. There are half-eaten plates of food all over the kitchen and living room. Empty beer cans and litter every surface. My desk, the coffee table, and the kitchen counters, crumpled cans lying on the carpet, and there are a dozen or more empty liquor bottles, bourbon and vodka, plus the one I found in my bed. There are bags of trash on the kitchen floor overflowing onto the linoleum, and the ashtrays are all overflowing with butts. The mess I've left behind stuns me. I wonder if I've had others over to help create some of this, or if I did it all myself. Somewhere in there, I clean a half-inch of brown sludge out of the coffee decanter and make a fresh pot. I know because I remember pouring the last of the bourbon into a cup of coffee, and I remember I walked back and forth from the kitchen to the bedroom to the living room several times, still in my underwear, dragging my shotgun behind me, sipping my coffee. What I'm thinking during this hour or so is that I've run out of options, or I'm trying to conjure up some options. I can't stand the way I'm living, the misery and loneliness and how everything revolves around alcohol, but I can't quit, or I can't stay quit. Almost anything would be better than this, even death. Maybe death is my only out. Maybe I'm going to have to kill myself to get out of this. At some point, I checked the shotgun, breaking it open, and there's a shell in it, double-aught buck. Then I'm in the living room closet, pulling all my jackets and coats and shoes out and slinging everything across the living room carpet. I set a metal folding chair up in the center of the closet and close the door and sit on the chair. It's cool on the backs of my thighs. I cock the shotgun and put the muzzle in my mouth and then find the trigger with my thumb. How long I sit in the dark like this, I don't know, but I want to stop my mind from thinking because it seems somehow sacrilegious to shoot myself in the middle of a thought. Somebody in a meeting once said that alcoholism is a disease of overreaction. I don't think, sitting in the closet, it occurs to me that I might be somewhat overreacting. I think some part of my mind is aware how absurd the whole situation is. Maybe I'm trying to talk myself out of pulling the trigger. I don't know. But what happens? The telephone rings, and it startles me. I fall off the metal folding chair, almost blowing my head apart by accident, and the chair lands on top of me, cracking me in the head. Christ! The phone keeps ringing and ringing, and I get up off the floor and step out into the living room. It's no longer dark out, but the light is that pre-dawn smudgy gray, and I can see the phone on the coffee table. For some reason, I don't answer. The phone hasn't rung in this apartment for a while. People really don't want to talk to me, and I don't blame them. I stand there looking at the telephone until it stops ringing. So that's the opening of Halfway House. It is available anywhere you buy books, or you can order it off our website if you like to do it that way. Cheers. Stay sober. I will see you in a few days. And by the way, if you are going through an emergency like the one that I just described and you need some help, dial 211. If you're having a mental health issue or a drug-related, alcohol-related issue, or both, or all three, call 211. Help is there. We're out here to help. Give us a call. Thank you.